Whilst you're stuck at home twiddling your thumbs, you might be thinking it's time to upgrade or change my camera. But on the other hand, there's no photography shops open, so where can we turn for advice? That's where this video comes in, because in this latest episode of The Basics of Photography with Yorkshire Photo Walks, we're asking the question, which camera should I buy? When it comes to buying a new camera, before you even go online and have a look at what's out there, I recommend you considering 4 things. Firstly, the type of photography you're interested in. Are you interested in landscape photography, portraiture, documentary, street photography, and do you even like to dabble in a bit of motion picture work? Secondly, how frequently are you going to use this new piece of camera equipment? Is it something that you're going to be taking out with you every single day, or is it something just for day trips and holidays? Thirdly, I'd like you to consider the level of photography that you are at now and potentially where you would like to get to. Maybe you are just a beginner at the moment, just getting used to manual settings. Or maybe you're already on the manual settings and you want something that gives you a bit more picture quality. And finally, the thing that's probably at the forefront of most people's minds when they're buying a new camera, budget. There's no point in going for the top-end SLRs if you can't afford them, and equally there's no point in going for the cheaper cameras if they're not going to do exactly what you want them to do. To start off with, I'm going to run through a few different scenarios and levels of camera equipment to help you make that decision about which camera it's going to be best for you personally to buy. And I'm going to try and be as honest as I possibly can in my advice. So let's start off by thinking of the scenario that you are just a casual photographer. You take your camera out when you go out for a walk or you take it on holiday, and you're not necessarily interested about learning how to use it manually, you just want to point and shoot and get great results. If you're one of these people, I would say stick with a good smartphone. These days smartphone technology is absolutely fantastic when it comes to cameras. Sometimes the lenses aren't as good, but if you're just sharing your photographs on social media and looking at them on a computer, then quite frankly, you're not going to need anything more. And if you're carrying it around in your pocket all day anyway, you're probably going to be more likely to take shots rather than having to carry an extra piece of camera equipment round with you that you might think, well, oh, is it really worth getting out of my bag at this moment in time? Our next scenario is that, again, you're a beginner photographer, but this time you'd like to learn a bit more about the technicalities of photography, how to expose your photographs manually and get the best results you possibly can out of your camera. But at the same time, you're not ready to make that leap to a DSLR or something similar. In these scenarios, I would recommend getting a bridge camera, which is exactly what it says on the tin. It bridges the gap between a smartphone or a compact camera that you may be coming from to the more complicated SLRs. The The great thing about bridge cameras is they have fantastic lenses on that cover all types of photography. So with the same camera and same lens, you can capture wide-angle landscapes and telephoto close-ups. The only downside to these cameras is because the lenses give you so much scope, the image quality isn't often as good. But if you're just starting out and getting to grips with the ropes of photography, then these cameras are your best option. And in the world of bridge cameras, there's never been any better than Panasonic Lumix. So I would go with one of those if this ties into what you're interested in. Our next scenario is that you may be coming from a bridge camera or a more complex compact camera. You have a basic grip of manual settings, but you still need to learn a bit more. But you just feel that you are ready for something a bit more advanced. In these scenarios, I would go with what are known as compact system cameras, also sometimes known as micro four thirds cameras, due to their smaller sensor size. Because of that smaller sensor size, they are often more compact, smaller than your entry-level SLRs, and sometimes even smaller than bridge cameras. But they also give you that luxury of being able to interchange lenses to get better picture quality. There are three main market leaders in this area of photography. You've got the Olympus OMD series, the Fuji X series, and the Canon M series. Now, as much as this pains me to say it as a Nikon camera user most of the time, I would go in this scenario with the Canon M series. Mainly because with the Olympus OMDs you tend to need a degree to decipher anything from the menus, and with the Fuji X series you tend to need the most up-to-date software for transferring photographs to the computer and editing them if you want to, which can come at a cost. With the Canon M series, it tends to be really quite straightforward, and if you are looking to upgrade to another camera afterwards, then if you're going to go for a Canon, then you'll already know your way around the menus, so it won't be as difficult. I'm now going to look at another branch of the same scenario. In this scenario, you might not be as bothered about the size of your camera. In these scenarios, I would go with an entry-level SLR camera or an entry-level mirrorless camera. Now, the difference between mirrorless and SLRs is SLRs tend to be a bit more technical in the way that you make photographs. You can't necessarily see your exposure before you take the photograph, so you have to rely on your knowledge of the settings. So they're great ways of learning the technicalities of photography. Mirrorless cameras give you live exposures, so you can see exactly what the exposure is going to be like on the screen on the back of the camera and in the viewfinder before you take the photograph. Mirrorless cameras also tend to be a bit more compact in their nature. The downside to mirrorless cameras as opposed to DSLR cameras is that you don't have that optical viewfinder. So in a DSLR, when you look through the viewfinder, you're looking at exactly what you're looking at, whereas in a mirrorless camera, you're looking at a digital representation of that. Now, some people can't get to grips with that at all, but others like it just because of the simplicity of it and the process of image making. That's a decision I think you'll have to make for yourself. Now, when it comes to entry-level cameras in this bracket, then it opens up a whole world of possibilities. Obviously, in the SLR range, your market leaders are Nikon and Canon. When it comes to mirrorless cameras, the market leaders tend to be Sony and Fuji. All of them have their ups and downs. Canon cameras tend to have really nice, easy, simple to use menus, and also have brilliant autofocus capabilities. Nikon cameras, although they don't have as good autofocus as Canon do, their optics are probably the best on the market, i.e. the lenses that you can get for them give you the best image quality out of any other camera. The Sonys are absolutely brilliant in terms of the way that they work technically, and the Fujis are really nice looking cameras. When you get a Fuji camera you think, yes, I've got a proper camera here. Now, it always comes down to your own personal preference at this point in time. But as I've said previously in this video, always think about your next upgrade. So if you're buying an SLR camera, think, if I get this SLR camera, am I going to be able to take the lenses forward if I upgrade to another camera? Mirrorless cameras tend to be a bit more shaky on this platform because they often have different sized connectors for the lenses. So sometimes you have to change all of your camera kit if you're going to upgrade with a mirrorless camera. With SLR cameras, it tends to be that you can keep the same lenses for one camera and then use them on the next one that you buy. In our final scenario, you have already got an entry-level DSLR or entry-level mirrorless camera, and you're ready to take the plunge to something a bit more advanced. So in this bracket we're looking at the high-end SLR cameras, high-end mirrorless cameras, and also full-frame cameras. Now, full-frame cameras are full-frame sensor cameras, so the size of the sensor equates to the size of 35mm film back in the good old days of photography. The reason that people tend to go for these is because it gives you larger images and often better quality images. But don't feel that you have to take the plunge and go for a full frame camera to make you into a proper, fully fledged, good photographer. Because at the end of the day, a photographer is only as good as their eye. So somebody with the best camera in the world might not get as good photographs as somebody with a good eye that has a mediocre camera. So don't feel that you have to be pressured into going for something that maybe isn't right for you. Again, when it comes to this area of the consumer market, there are three leaders. We've got Canon and Nikon in the SLR market, and Sony and Nikon in the mirrorless market. Now, the reason that I've missed out Canon from the mirrorless market is because they still need a bit more emphasis on the technology to catch up with Nikon and Sony in that area of the market. But that's not to say, if you've come from a Canon entry-level SLR, that you shouldn't go with a Canon mirrorless camera, because it would make sense, because you've got the lenses already, and with Canon mirrorless cameras you can buy an adapter that transfers the lenses across. So don't be put off just because I've said that the technology is good enough if you're already using Canon gear. If you're not, then I would go with either the Nikon Z series or the Sony higher end mirrorless cameras. The Sonys and Nikons are probably on a par with one another. Again, the Nikon optics are probably slightly better, whereas the Sony autofocus and the way that the camera works technically is probably slightly got the upper hand. When it comes to SLRs, then it really doesn't matter whether you go for Nikon or Canon. I'm not the sort of person that's going to argue one's better than the other, because they're always playing off against each other in the market. So whichever system suits you better, whether it's down to the menus, the optics, or just the look and feel of the camera, that's something that you yourself have got to decide. The final point that I'm going to make, and it's probably the most important point of this whole episode, is that whichever camera you buy, if it's got interchangeable lenses, always leave a bit extra in your budget to buy better lenses. Now, I always say that lenses make the camera, not the other way round. So you can spend thousands on a camera body, and put a substandard lens on the front and you're still going to get poor image quality. You can use a substandard camera body and put an excellent lens on the front and you're probably going to get a better photograph in terms of optical quality. So lenses are really important. I'm going to do another video covering different types of lenses in the future, so keep an eye out for that one. But in the meantime, think that the kit lenses that you often buy with a camera are good, but especially on entry-level SLRs, they're not quite as good as some of the other lenses that you can buy on the market. So by all means buy into a kit, but at the same time leave extra money in your budget for buying proper decent lenses. And I would always recommend buying the lenses that are the same make as your camera. There are other makes out there such as Tamron and Sigma that do produce really good lenses, but they're never any substitute for the lenses that are made for your camera, because they are made for your camera. So I hope you found this video useful. I hope it's steered you in the right direction when it comes to making the decision to either change or upgrade your camera. I hope to see you again soon. I hope you're enjoying lockdown, but at this point I'm just going to say stay safe and stay at home and protect the NHS as the government are advising us to do, and I hope to see you in another video in the not too distant future. Thank you for watching.